Opening race weekend of the BMW IBSF Skeleton World Cup. We're in Sigulda in Latvia, ready to go into the darkness in the second heat of the first competition of the weekend. First competition of the season, and indeed the first of two here in Sigulda, where we hold double race weekends. The first 2 weekends of the season will be here, just a half-hour drive from the Latvian capital, Riga. 18 sleds completed the first heat. They all go down in the second. In reverse order of their performance, we go last to fast, with our first round leader, last year's winner, defending his lead. Well, it wasn't all about fast starts, but the caged tiger that is Felix Kaisinger produced the equal fastest start at a competition. Tied by Craig Thompson. Kaisinger, though, had a better run down the ice. The German in third place after the first heat. And as we finished in February here, so we start in November. Thomas Ducours in the silver medal position. The most experienced slider in the field and the oldest man at 39 years of age. Still has all the pace. He's in the silver medal position after the first run, 200s ahead of Felix Kaisinger, but it is not quite so tight at the top. His 2 years younger brother, Martin Ducours, last year's winner here and the World Cup champion, is our race leader after the first heat. It's a very different view to February. Face masks, social distancing, COVID testing, and of course behind closed doors. Last year was a riot of noise and colour, with the place absolutely jammed with Latvian fans. No chance of that this year, I'm afraid. Martin and Thomas Ducours the leader, though, but look at the battle for the podium. From 4,500s back to 5,500s back, a tenth of a second covers second to seventh, so it could be a big sort out for the medals. The top three in the women's competition all held their spots after the first heat, but it's no guarantee that'll happen here. Well, this morning it was cold and crisp. This afternoon it has been drizzly and the rain is getting heavier. And in fact, as the temperature starts to sag a little, we are not too far away from snow. Air temperature at just around freezing now. It is dropping steadily, and the ice at -3. The control steel tells the jury how cold the runners are allowed to be. Not allowed hot runners. So we go in reverse order of our first round. So Mihai Pakianu again first out of the start shed, as he was. He was the very first male slider of the season. Start draw number 1 for the young Romanian, and he goes off again first because he was 18th in the first heat. Last to go will be the leader. Martin Ducours does not often throw away a near half-second advantage over anybody. The intrigue then will be the battle behind, from Gassner up perhaps to Thomas Ducours. Second heat, race 1 of the BMW IBSF Men's Skeleton World Cup gets underway with Romania's Mihai Pakianu, the 21-year-old as he is now, in his 7th World Cup start. He's also competed at a couple of World Championships, and he's raced for the national bobsleigh team as well. Well, Mihai started the first heat with a 4.70, 4.69. Is that an indication he had just a fraction more get up and go at the start, or is the ice firming up? At the beginning of the first run, it was very glossy. You see it's got a very matte sheen to it now, and that's a sign of frost. With all the humidity in the air and the refrigeration on hard to keep the ice alive, it tends to get frosty quickly. And of course, like the door of your refrigerator, frost grabs at these runners as well. 52.41, so 2,500s slower than his first heat. He's our rabbit, so he will give us an indication perhaps of how the track is going to hold up, deteriorate, or indeed improve. It doesn't always get worse. Sometimes with cold it gets better. That tends not to be the case when it is a bit damp as well. Take a look here. This is a tricky driver's track, 16 turns. It was originally designed as a luge track. Equally suitable, of course, for skeleton. Two-man bobs can get down it as well. But four-man bobs are a bit of a squeeze, although the Ducours brothers have driven bobs down this track in four-man, so it is doable. Turn one is hard. So heading off into the leader's box in the drizzle. He'll be thrilled by that. Next up, Ronald Arderset of Switzerland, 31 years of age. Finished in 25th place in last year's season finale here. This is it's a bit of a landmark. It's his 40th World Cup start. An engineer, he had a pretty wide sporting background before he settled on skeleton. He was a soccer player, a sailor, a judoka, and played floorball as well. 469, same start as Mihai Pakianu. And so as a result, holding his advantage early on. It was only 800ths of a second, now it's out to 2100ths. Had less dramas in 2 and 3 through the upper labyrinth. Ooh, big height, whips round. 12, 13 and 14, not a bad exit again. He's a little to the right, hits the wall on the exit. Best speed so far, but skating out of 15. And that is going to just murder his speed all the way to the line. Well, a 51.56, that's a much faster run than his first heat. 5300ths quicker, so a good half-second better, but he's disgusted with himself. Those mistakes lower down possibly cost him a quarter of a second, maybe 2/10. So big height here, swoops down. He's going to drill the wall on the entry, and that then pushes him into the middle of the turn. You can see him trying to hold it, stop it going right up to the roof. And out of 14, just a little late flop, but Bink dinks into the wall, then has to fight to straighten up the sled, and he also needs to bring it over to sliders left there. Little exit here, tap on the wall, uphill, over the outrun, and you could see the ice spraying up from. No, Ronnie was a French speaker as well. Next up for Italy, Amedeo Bagnis. And the 21-year-old, last week he turned 21 on the 11th of this month. 5th World Cup start for him, hasn't raced here before. And he will admit, I'm sure, that it showed in the first heat. 4.75. Well, that's nearly a 10th of a second quicker than his first run. Let's see if he can find that and carry that speed to the bottom. Little hit from 2 to 3. And that's pretty much the standard line. You have to be very good or incredibly lucky to avoid that. Not bad through the upper labyrinth. Still got the advantage. Ooh, again, a little wild. Those crossovers, 11, 12, 13, 14. Can be pretty expensive. 1200s up. Second best speed to Ronald Arderset. The gap's going to come right down. Didn't have as big a skid there as Ronnie. Amedeo Bagnis should hold this at the line. Doesn't by 1100ths. Having momentum uphill cannot be overemphasized. You can be great going downhill, but most of our bobsleigh tracks, the final few corners tend to go uphill. And that's because a lot of them were built many years ago when shorter distances worked okay. Again, this little whip round crossover. He's got a big slide going here, skids sideways onto the turn. And then big early height. Not too bad out of 14. Looking ahead of him. Watch his eyes tracking between the wall and the corner that he's looking at coming ahead. He's not quite sure which he should be looking at most, but out of 15, long skid over the hill. Second of our World Cup debutants in this race, 26-year-old Russian Daniel Romanov, former sprinter. He's from Moscow. Started in skeleton in 2016, raced in the Intercontinental Cup last year. That's the second tier of sliding for skeleton. So let's see what Romanov can produce. 7 fastest starter with a 4.59 in the first heat, 4.58. Again, it looks as though it's slightly less sticky at the top, so the ice might be slightly less soft. Not a bad run from 2 to 3. Looking a lot more relaxed, 48 hundredths up. He had 28 over Ronald Arderset from the first heat. You can hear lots of that's the chin piece of the helmet on the ice. Picks his head up now to get the line right into 15. And again, over the brow into 16. He'll give away a little bit of aero to make sure he gets the line right. Cross the line, hits on the wall, but a 51.12 to the 51.88 of the first heat. That's a big improvement for Daniel Romanov. And this track was originally built by the Soviet Union, and the Russians still have a very strong relationship with it. They do spend a lot of time training here. Their bobsledders often say that they spend much more time here than they ever do in Sochi. So let's see him sprinting away from the start, hand crossing over. Not a bad looking load. Only just very slightly off center. Barely has to shuffle the hips. Again, all of that sideways movement will be trying to pull the sled out of the grooves, and that friction will take away some of the speed at the start. Hypermotion here. Look at the rippling of the vest there, just in the low pressure area behind his head. That's why they get their vests, which are baggy, size XXL, and stitch them up till they're skin tight. Sammy Kaiser of Switzerland. Met him in the World Championships in Altenburg in February, but this is his first World Cup start. Raced last year in the Intercontinental Cup again, second tier of sliding, learning the business, learning how to deal with the sleds and the races and the pressure, learning the tracks. No such thing as too much time on ice, at least in terms of your knowledge. Ooh, little skid from 2 into 3, hits the wall. 7, 8, 9, corner 10, whip on and off. Big turn 11. Woo. Well, really fighting it in 13. That's going to cost him all the way down the straight to 15. Again, big height, got on a fraction later than he wanted. Not too bad on the straight up to corner 16. Does he hit the wall? No, he keeps it off. I think he was driving a little bit more than he wanted to at the bottom, but I think things got to him rather quicker than he thought. So Sammy Kaiser slips 3 spots. 4th place behind Amadeo Bañez. And when you are relatively young and inexperienced, and compared to the front runners here, he is definitely that, then that consistency is hard. Gets nudged away there. And that's always going to leave you late going on to the turn and late coming off. Bit of scorpion action there. Sucks it up on the exit of 14, acting as his own shock absorber for the sled. 5 sleds down, our race leader is Daniel Romanov, the newcomer. Vladislav Heraskevich of the Ukraine, 24th World Cup start for Vlad. Just 21-year-old, former weightlifter, power lifter, strongman, mixed martial arts competitor. His dad, Mikhail, is his coach, former strongman himself, and shed a lot of weight over the previous summer to try and change his body from pure power to more speed at the start, more flexibility. 14th place in the race here last year. A couple of top 10 finishes, World Cup best in Lake Placid. And he soared to 8th place Only 200ths of a second off the lead, but he's got the best speed, 92.4 kilometers an hour. So he's back in the green, and that was a good run. Good through 13, good out of 14. This is Vlad when he is in the zone. Relaxed, holds his aero form. He knows he's not long and lean like an arrow. And a 50.96, that is a really good run. That's nearly 0.6 of a second better than he managed in the first heat, and that would have been just outside the top 10 in Heat 1. Well, as the temperature drops, it looks as though the ice is actually starting to firm up a little bit and get quicker. Now, of course, with that, as the ice gets harder, it means the runners have a little less control. And so you have to adapt to that. You have to guess the way the weather's going to go and maybe change the setup of your sled. Harder ice, you can have a smaller contact patch because it doesn't dig in so much. Of course, that gives you less control, or can give you less control. Vladislav Hereskevich of the Ukraine is our new race leader, from Russian newcomer Daniil Romanov and Ronald Orderset. Next up, Florian Auer. So Flo, the last of the hours, currently sliding, his 28th World Cup. 26-year-old former speed skater. Dad Christian took the boys first down the Innsbruck track when they were still babies, lying on the sled with him and kneeling over them. Quite sure what a 2 or 3-year-old made of that. I'm sure anything that Daddy did was fine by them. 4:77 getaway. Is the 6th fastest run or start so far. 300ths ahead of Hereskevich. Vlad outstarted him by a whisker. Smoother looking run again from Florian Auer, but he's losing ground. 1:14.0, Hereskevich was 1:16.1. That's a big margin that Hereskevich has in hand. This will be a 0.2 deficit at the line. Wow, a half second slower. 51.58 in the first heat, 51.58 in the second heat for Florian Auer. But I think the track is getting quicker. There should have been more there. And of course, this is the new normal. You don't have the mask on coming down, but you need it the moment you take the helmet off. Disgruntled looking Florian Auer, big height there, in 15. Didn't quite get nudged away by the build-up of ice, but came back up again. He brought it down just a fraction too late, and we're talking hundreds of seconds of the judgment where that steer is. And he's disappointed to have slipped a couple of spots. Well, we've seen Amedeo Bagnis of Italy. Next up, Mattia Gaspari. We haven't seen much of him for the last couple of seasons before he made his return at the end of last year here in Sigulda. His previous World Cup race was in the Pyeongchang test event in 2017. So between February 2017 and February 2020, early in the 2019-20 season, he was racing Europa Cup just to get back up to speed after a torn Achilles. He injured himself trying to come back from that. He had a long time away from the ice. Thrilled to be back in the Italian team. 92.5, best speed we've seen, quicker than Hereskevich. He's still in the green. 1:16.1, quicker than Hereskevich, or tied with Hereskevich, so he should take the lead from the Ukrainian. Good run here at the bottom, tiny rub on the wall, 6300s in front, 50.87. That's a big run from Mattia Gaspari. Grande indeed. Good 0.3 of a second better than his first heat. And just watch the way that they load. That's why you need all of that speed and power. Such a major injury for these athletes. Such an unnatural sprinting style. Not bad. Matej Gaspari leads Vladislav Heraskevich and Danil Romanov. Our first 8 sleds down, the final 10 still to come in our second and deciding heat, race 1 of the BMW IBSF Skeleton World Cup. Well, an interesting change to the track, and so much of the experience is not just knowing where the corners are, which helps, and knowing what line. Got to have a magic marker for your mask, knowing what line to use, but also feeling in the first couple of turns what the sled is telling you, what it's reporting back to you about how the track is changing, whether there's more grip and you therefore have to steer a little more or a little earlier, whether there's less, or the other way around, whether there's less grip and you have to steer a little more and a little earlier, or whether there's more grip, whether the runners are getting more purchase on the ice, in which case you need to steer a little less and a little later maybe. And it's the experience of years and years, and in the case of the likes of the Dukos brothers and Alexander Tretyakov, of literally a decade and a half, nearly 2 decades of sliding ice. And don't forget, you know, we see them 8 World Cup races a year, plus the World Championships. They'll spend weeks pre and post-season on ice. And before they even get to World Cup, they'll all have spent usually 3, 4, 5 seasons training and learning and then racing to get a grip on these things. And like everything else, the form is a little bit variable, or can be variable. Consistency is absolutely key. When you get 2 60-second runs a week, you have to make them count. Christoph Grote here, limbering up. He needs a little bit more in the second heat. Sigulda in Latvia, the track is clear for our final 10 sliders in the second heat of the men's skeleton season opener. Christopher Grote here, 10th after the first heat. The 28-year-old reigning world champion in a perhaps slightly more accustomed position at the other end of the top 10 to where he finished in Altenburg. Second fastest exit velocity from the second fastest push so far in the competition. Well, so far in the second heat. 2700ths ahead of current leader Matej Gaspari. He was 2/10ths ahead of the Italian for the first heat. He's got barely any extra in the tank, only an extra 400ths, and a little skid there will possibly take some of that away. Speed was good, but not as good as Gaspari, so he's down to a 10th in front. 1:14.4. That's about where the Italian was. This could be very close at the line. Doesn't look like Grote here has gone the right way on setup, and he's behind by 600ths. He will not necessarily finish in the top 10. Matej Gaspari picks off the world champion. You're at liberty to change the setup on your sled between runs. You can't change the actual runners. So in car racing terminology, let's say you have to keep the same tires, but you can change the tire pressure and you can maybe adjust, you know, camber, caster, that sort of thing to change the way the tire works. And here you can change the rock on the runner, where you put the center of pressure further forward or further backward, or whether you reduce or increase the contact patch based on where you think the track will be when you get to it and how you think it was when you first run it. Well, that was a fairly unequivocal hand gesture. It wasn't quite the massive thumbs down, but he wasn't hugely impressed. Down at the bottom of the track, I think we saw Amelia Coltman from Great Britain, who made her World Cup start this morning, her first World Cup start. Ready to greet teammates who are coming up next. This is 29-year-old Marcus Wyatt from Great Britain. 21st World Cup start for him. 4:56 getaway. It was 4:57 in the first heat. Right in amongst the quick starters. Played football, and whether you're an American or a Brit, yes, that one, because he played American football as well as football. Before coming into Skeleton, part of the British programme. Best day of his World Cup career so far in Innsbruck, Austria, last season. 3rd place after the first heat. He did get bounced out of the medals, ended up in 4th place. That was a real coming of age there, and that's that day where you suddenly recalibrate your expectations. 50.76, good run from him. 50.90 in the first heat, so he finds another 1400ths of a second. And the rain is now starting to come back down with a bit of a vengeance. The track will not speed up. In fact, this is sleet now almost, isn't it? Yep, so helmet off, and somehow, while you're trying to not drop your helmet, you've also got to work out how to get your mask on single-handed. So Marcus Wyatt takes the lead, 2-3, just a little rub, so he didn't get set up too badly into 3. A little skid out of 15, but he got straightened up by the wall, just allowed that to happen. Little brush on the wall into the finish area, though, across the line. Otherwise, he might have been a little further ahead. Well, Marcus Wyatt in a big battle for, well, potentially medals, because anybody here who has a good run could be right in the hunt. Alexander Gassner just 300ths ahead of Marcus Wyatt. And Marcus was only 2200ths out of bronze, only 2400ths, yes, out of silver. So this group here, from Wyatt, who was 9th, up to Thomas Ducours, who was 2nd, it's a very big mixing pot. Who's coming out on top? Alexander Gassner of Germany, 467, so gives away all of his first heat advantage before he even lies down on the sleds to Marcus Wyatt. Let's see if he can drive his way back in, or whether the changing conditions are going to catch him out as well. 100th back, still in the red, but best speed so far, 93 kilometers an hour, quicker than Mattia Gaspari. 900ths up, but one mistake here could easily take that away, and he got in a little high, came out a little late. 1:17.5, best speed. Gassner should go through into the lead, the 31-year-old. Finished in 6th here last year. He leads with 7 to go. But that was a ½ second quicker than his first run, 50.36, and he is stoked with that, to use the surfing vernacular and any other vernacular. He looks very much happy with that run. Yeah, better. Exactly so. Not perfect. None of them really, other than the Latvians, the Russians and a couple of others, have spent enough time here for it to be near perfection. But as busking it goes, that was a good second heat. And always better to be better in your second heat. Feels better to be moving up the order than it does to be moving back down. And Nikita Tregobov, our race winner here 2 seasons ago. And shocked to be alerted to the fact that that was his first ever race win when we were interviewing him afterwards in the World Cup. Hang on a minute, really? Well, he hasn't quite got the speed at the moment that we expect from him. 25-year-old, 4:66. He was 4:68 in the first heat. But the fastest runs, 4:53 at the start. So giving away 1300ths in the start area, which for Tregobov is a lifetime. That's not to say he can't slide, like when Alexander Tretyakov arrived. To start with, Nikita had phenomenal speed in the starting area and just hit everything on the way down, exactly the same that Tretyakov did. Look at Tretykov's first World Cup races. He was finishing in the 30s. That's how big fields were back then. 1:15.6, only the 5th best speed. It's drifting away. Tregibov not going to be the leader at the line. Second. Just though, just ahead of Marcus Wyatt by 100th of a second. So the Russian girls didn't have the greatest day today, and the Russian men aren't having an awful lot better day. Nikita slips one behind Alexander Gassner. Gassner, our World Championship bronze medalist, goes ahead of our 2019 World and 2018 Olympic silver medalist. '17-18 was really his peak form. 18-19 and 19-20. He has slipped a little in terms of pace. What about this young man? Matt Weston of Great Britain, 23 years old, 2nd World Cup start. Raced once last year in St. Moritz. They brought him in because they had the opportunity to give him a bit of a taste of World Cup. The lights, the cameras, all this stuff you don't get at the other levels because it's not televised. The headshots, people like me annoying you for details about where you've come from and what you've done and how come and why for and wherefore. And then at the end of the year, with Madeline Smith, went to the World Championships and competed in the teams championship in skeleton, and they ended up just being squeezed out in the final runs from a medal. They ended up in 4th place. Spent the rest of the season racing in Europa Cup, learning the tracks. He's ahead of Alexander Gassner, the bronze medalist in the men's competition in Altenburg. Still got a slender advantage. And remains in the green, 500s back, needs the speed now. Gassner was fastest at 1:17.5. 1:16.1 is good speed for Matt Weston. He may not hold off Gassner, but he may end up in 2nd spot at the line. And he does, ahead of Nikita Tregibov and ahead of teammate Marcus Wyatt. That's a really good run off a 4:59 start. A 50.71. Well, he was 50.73 in the first heat, so he's not finding big slices of pace that some of the others have. That means that his first run was pretty decent and his second run pretty decent too. 2 to 3, gets that early nudge away. Now that gives him a fraction of a second more to sort it out. And here, decent exit. Hit on the wall though before the line. That's 1/2 a tenth. And that perhaps would have left him ahead of Gassner, maybe not.
No, sir.
Gassner's the race leader, Matt Weston 2nd, Nikita Tregibov in 3rd, as we have our final 5 fastest sliders still to go here in Sigulda. Top 5 after Heat 1 go in reverse order, as we are in the 2nd heat of the Men's Skeleton World Cup season opener in Sigulda, Latvia. 5th after Heat 1 was Great Britain's Craig Thompson, tied for the fastest start of the competition. Former soccer player, 28 years old, now in his 9th World Cup start. Had a nightmare here last year, finished in 24th place. 4 tenths ahead of current leader Alexander Gassner. There was nothing like that. The 2nd to 9th place group were covered by 2 tenths of a second. Time going away to Gassner. He's only got the 12th best speed. He's going to be behind at the line. May not be by much, but he is going to be behind. 7th best speed. It's coming back a little. Not enough to overhaul Gassner, who was the fastest at this stage. Will he be in 2nd ahead of teammate Matt Weston? No, just behind him, a 10th back. So Matt Weston remains 2nd, Craig Thompson 3rd with 4 to go. Alexander Gassner, the leader, may yet be in the medals. Well, 50.81 compared to a 50.73 in the first heat, so 0.8 of a second slower. We are talking absolutely tiny margins, but a 4:49 getaway, the start record set last February by Zheng Yin of China, 4:47. He was 200ths off the start record. Not a bad exit here, but the speed was gone in 10:11:12.
Hello everyone back home. Love to you all. Stay safe.
So say all of us.
Nice one, boys.
4 to go then to sort out the medals. Alexander Gassner leads from Matt Weston, Craig Thompson, Nikita Tregibov and Marcus Wyatt. And next up, Alexander Tretyakov. Tretyakov with 121st World Cup start. Alex now 35 years old, started racing internationally in the Russian squad in 2000. Double World Cup champion, world champion in Samoritz in 2013. 17 World Cup wins and 44 other podiums. That is a lot. Only the 9th best speed. He's still in the lead over Alex Gassner, but you sense maybe not for long. That's it, he's surely going to be in the red, and that gap will grow. Yes, only the 12th best speed, and he's going to be dropping like a stone. Might not even be top 6 at the line. 10th fastest run. And we still have the 3 quickest to go. That came unraveled in a hurry. To quote Ken Childs from the women's race, the wheels came off on that run. They really did. Well, here, little rub on the wall. Not a major error, but look at the height there. And this quick transition, he was never really going to fare well out of that. Plunging off the sidewall rather than emerging smoothly from the curve. And again here, too late. And he came down on the left side runner and basically on the bunk. Yep, things to think about as ever for Alexander Tretyakov. Into the top 3 then with Alexander Gassner, who, let's remind ourselves, was 8th after the first heat, our current leader. So we will have a German on the podium. The question is, will it be Alexander Gassner, the World Championship bronze medalist, or will it be Germany's fastest starter? First World Cup was in Sigulda in December 2018 for Felix Kaisinger, and he has had some phenomenal runs. Unfortunately for him, he has not often had the phenomenal runs in the same race. Usually it's heat 2 of everything. 3 podium finishes, 2nd in Samoritz in January of this year. All started to come together a little better. Possessed of a mercurial start, and this is another top draw Kaisinger second heat. This is a really good run from Felix Kaisinger. Only the 7th best speed though. Teammate Gassner was quickest at the bottom, 2.2 Ks quicker. This could be very close to the line, hits the wall and goes, but he does not go behind. Well, I was wrong, wasn't I? We had a German leader and a German challenger with 2 Latvians remaining. I said we'd have a German on the podium. I was wrong. I was half right. We have 2 Germans on the podium. 50.55 run, 50.36 of Alex Gassner is still the 2nd fastest heat we've had in the competition in the first and the 2nd run. But 50.55 from Felix Kaisinger here would have left him in the silver medal position after the first heat. So if both the Germans have produced those runs, Heat 1 would still have had Martins Ducours at the top, but it would have been Gassner second, Kaisinger third. Well, he's in the medals, so is Alexander Gassner, honours even. So we've got 2 in the leaders box and 2 to come. And the only way you get 2 in is if they're both in bronze. If you have 2 for silver, there is no bronze medalist. The next one is 4th. So for Thomas, this is a big run. 39-year-old Thomas Ducours, the Latvian, 127th World Cup race. And a 4:69 start. Same as in the first heat. Clearly, 40 in Latvia is the new 21. They've lost none of their speed, these 2 brothers, Thomas and Martins. They were 1-2 last year. Best speed, 93.1 kilometers an hour. If anyone should be expected to react best to the changing conditions in Sigulda, it should be the brothers. 12 hundredths up on the Germans who lead, Gassner and Kaisinger. But only the 5th best speed. 1:16, he's 1.5 k's back, avoids the wall, but he goes behind. He's in 3rd. There will only be 1 Latvian on the podium. Well, he was the silver medalist last year, or last season in February, behind brother Martins, but he is currently in 3rd place. So unless we have Germans tied for gold, he will not be on the podium today. The scene of his first ever and still only World Cup win, Sigulda in Latvia, way back in the dawn of his career almost. And just too many mistakes low down. Anything below 13, 14, that's the graveyard of time. No matter where else you lose it, if you lose it there ain't no coming back. So, first half of the run for Thomas Ducours looked like he was really on top of it. Second half, it drifted away. How is his brother going to fare? He had a 4500s lead after the first heat, but that was over his closest rival, Thomas Ducours. He's got a 66 hundredths of a second lead over Felix Kaisinger and Alexander Gassner from the first heat. 4:56 getaway. That's where he was in the first heat as well, exactly to the 100th of a second. I made the note when we came here for the first time 2 years ago, looking back at previous race results, that 10 years on, Martins Ducours was getting on for a 1/3 of a second quicker at the start than he had been when he was in his 20s. That's how much these guys bury themselves for their sport. He is 9/10 in front. This is a rerun of last year where he just raced away to roaring adulation from the massive crowd, and today in total silence he comes across the line to win it by 0.8 of a second. 50.23, the fastest run in Heat 1, the fastest run in Heat 2. Alexander Gassner with 50.36 in Heat 2, very close. But it is win number 55 of his World Cup career for our reigning World Cup champion, who now is our World Cup leader as well for the 2020-21 season. And the good news for Martins, guess where we go next week? Yeah, we don't go anywhere, we stay here. But for now, 2 4:56 starts. Second oldest man in the field, 3rd fastest starter. Hey children, bring it on. And when he's on the sled, that's where he really does the damage. Here, there and everywhere. Not sure there's a track he hasn't won on. So last year's winner does it again. The World Cup champion continues his winning ways as he ended last World Cup season. That's his 3rd straight win. Samarit, Sigulda and Sigulda. Felix Kaisinger, Alexander Gassner tied for silver. Thomas Ducours in 4th ahead of Matt Weston, Craig Thompson. And Marcus Wyatt split only the 3 Brits by Nikita Tregebov, with Alexander Tretyakov behind them in 9th, and Mattia Gaspari, top 10 finish. The first for him in, well, 3.5 seasons, maybe 4. Christopher Groothair slipped to 11th, disappointing for the world champion ahead of Vladislav Heraskevich. And our 2 newcomers, Daniel Romanov and Sami Kaiser, both get a solid finish, 13th and 17th. So our World Cup champion is our new World Cup leader. Race 1 in the books, and we stay here for next weekend. The second round of the BMW IBSF Men's Skeleton World Cup will be here in Sigulda as well. So for Martins Ducours, that is a great way to start a double home race winning opportunity. In fact, if he wins next weekend, then that will be a unique hat-trick. Not sure anybody's ever had the opportunity to win 3 straight on their home track. Maybe in their home country, maybe not on their home track. That's it then from the IBSF TV crew here in Sigulda. From me, Martin Haven, thank you for joining us. Don't forget, Saturday we get on with our 2-man and women's competition. 2-man starts at 9 local, that's 0700 GMT, and the women on ice at 2 p.m. That's midday GMT. I'll see you at 7 tomorrow morning for the first of our 2-man competition runs.